Let me introduce at the far end the author of The Life of Pi, Yann Martel. Next, an actor who's just given an extraordinary performance you've all seen, Suraj Sharma. Next, the president of Fox 2000, who made this possible, Elizabeth Gabler. And finally, a man who just got off the phone talking to a tiger trainer. I'm not kidding. Ang Lee. Let me start, if I can, with a question to you, Yann. Nowadays, I think for many writers, the idea of seeing their work transposed to the screen has become, if not a given, just a very typical event. But I'm wondering, did you imagine Life of Pi ever as a film? And did you imagine it like this film?
No. When I was writing it, it was very cinematic in my mind because of the contrast of colors, you know, the blue ocean, the white lifeboat, the orange and black tiger. So in my mind, it was very cinematic. But even the most basic cinema goer can realize that to turn that story, simple as the words are on the page, to turn it into a movie would be an enormous technical challenge. So, no, I didn't imagine it. It was cinematic in my mind, but I never thought I'd actually see it on the screen. I thought it'd be too complicated to do.
And Ang, after you read it, what did you first imagine in terms of, how am I going to really make this into a movie?
Well, I read it when the book came out. I found it fascinating and mind-boggling. But I remember thinking to myself, nobody in their right mind will put up money for this, because it's literature, it's a philosophy. Regardless how cinematic it is, it'll be very, very expensive, nearly impossible to do. And how do you sell this thing? I think the economic side and the artistic side might not ever meet. You know, it's like the number pi. Until about 4 years ago, Elizabeth approached me, say that it's available, it'll be their dream to work with me. And little by little, it started to become like my destiny, my faith, so to speak. Yeah, it's a long story, but.
Elizabeth, can you talk a little bit about the whole technical armature that had to come into place to make such a movie possible?
Well, we knew that we could never make this film without a superior guiding light in our leader, the filmmaker that was actually going to bring it to life. And when we heard that Ang was interested, possibly, I went to see him. And he said, why is it that a studio would make a film like this? It's going to be a big, huge movie. What is it that inspires you? And I told him that audiences are always craving something original and new, and we felt that under his directorship, we would have something that was extraordinary and that would be new to the world in so many different ways. And then it was just a process of working on the script. Ang felt that it would be a big challenge to get the script right. With our screenwriter, David McGee, he worked hand in hand, and the script was excellent. We were very excited by it. And then it was just a process championed by Tom Rothman, our chairman and my mentor, and Jim Giannopoulos, the co-chairman of Fox, for all of us to figure out a way that we could actually bring this film to life. And with the technology today, we were able to actually help Ang do that.
Was 3D always part of the package?
Well, it was later on. I mean, Ang, if I can speak for you just for a second, took things in stages. First, it was obviously the screenplay that he was very, determined to get right. And then I think the idea of bringing it to life in a bigger way, but yet to use 3D in his own language was really important, and that was how it started to be discussed, and we felt that we supported that decision, and that's what happened.
I didn't think this is possible if I do 2D.
So from the beginning, 3D was...
Actually, I thought about 3D, which is before I know what 3D is. If I add another dimension, maybe, just maybe, it might happen. Maybe I see the circle, because in a regular, like how we go about movie business, this cannot be done. I was just thinking about, it's just a silly thought like most movies are. starting with the city. I thought maybe at another dimension. I don't know how and what it is. Maybe it'll happen.
And Suraj, can you talk about how you got involved and how did Aang explain the role to you?
Initially, it was my brother. He had to go for the auditions, and I went with him. And they told me to audition too, and I did. And it went on for 6 months. I was called back. There were many callbacks. And finally, one day, they told me I have to go to Bombay and meet Daoyan. And I was really excited. I went there and gave the final audition. And the first time I did it, I didn't think I did very well. And then Daoyan talked to me. He kind of made me breathe in particular ways and kind of built that emotion inside of me. And by the end of it, I didn't even feel like I was acting anymore. I was just kind of an instrument of sorts, and he just kind of pulled that emotion through me, and it just went and came out. So,
Could you talk about the scenes when you were on the boat with the tiger? What was it like?
it was the boat was pretty empty. There was no tiger.
No.
But everybody made me see all these videos of tigers in different moods and different scenarios, and obviously tigers were there being trained, and I used to watch them being trained for long periods of time, and kind of this series of images of tigers in different moods and scenarios kind of built up in my head, and then by the end of it, I almost felt like the tiger really was there, it just wasn't there.
Let's get some questions from the audience. And we have some microphones? Okay, well, I guess not. Yes.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit
Oh,
about...
hold on, we do have a microphone. Sorry, she was in the back there. Just coming back to you.
I would love to hear a little bit about the discussions you guys had about the spiritual side of the story, and did you ever actually meet any survivors of a shipwreck?
You've heard the question about the spiritual side of the story.
Yes, I did meet a survivor. His name is Steve Callahan, who happened to be a good writer. In the 70s, he had a shipwreck, and he was drifting adrift for 76 days by himself on the plastic little raft. He wrote a pretty great book, and both Yann and I was.
It's actually
probably
mentioned in the
referenced.
book, if you're interested. At one point, Pi lists survivors at sea. He mentions Stephen Callahan.
Steve Callahan. So he, the first thing actually, when I start thinking about the script, I visited him. Me and the screenplay writer, David McGee, went and visited him in Maine. So we went out to sea and talked to him for days. And it turns out I brought him to Taiwan to make the movie together with me as not only consultant to me on the spiritual side, his experience, details, what you go through, and also he's a great guidance to Suraj. And I have them balance it, just, if that's the right look when you go through this and that, and just technically train how, a lot of the details are done, supervised by him. And also, it turns out, I built this wave tank just for this movie in Taiwan, and we're just learning how to use that, because nobody done it before, and he's a water consultant to me, how the wave land, how the wave functions, how you deal with it. So he's a great help. And he's a great spiritual leader for us, because he's fighting cancer at the same time. He's in the hospital. So he's a man we all cherish, just cherish what's good in life, what hang on to. And faith is indeed the thing that making through the voyage, fighting cancer and everything he goes through. So we do have that guru, so to speak. And there are other spiritual stories, but that's the one.
Suraj, can you remember anything that he told you that really stayed with you or helped your performance?
Well, he kind of, I met him we were on a ship, and it was raining and there were big waves, and I'm freaking out a little bit. And I meet Steve on the ship, and he says, "How are you doing?" And I didn't know who he was at that point, but he kind of explained to me how he had survived for 76 days, and we kind of had this really, I mean, we had this long conversation, and he was telling me how he felt, and how, I mean, I asked him, how did you feel when you were on that raft all alone, all around you, all you can see is, water? And he said that most of the time you don't feel anything. You're left completely blank. So those moments when you feel happiness are extreme, like they're ecstatic. And he kind of explained to me how emotions don't just become what we see normally or feel normally, and they become these extremely strong and very powerful feelings. And that's what I tried to kind of put into my acting as well, is just that feeling is,
The sort of bursts of emotion.
yeah, these bursts.
Yann?
In writing the book, another book that is mentioned in Life of Pi is a classic of survival at sea called Survive the Savage Sea. Hard to say it 10 times in a row, by a Scottish farmer named Dougal Robertson, who was sailing around the world with his family, and west of the Galapagos they were hit by killer whales, and they survived, I think it was 26 days at sea, which is less than Steve Callahan, but it was his entire family, and a Welsh hitchhiker they'd picked up at the Panama Canal. And he wrote this wonderfully understated book called Survive the Savage Sea, which was full of these very practical details which I needed in writing the book. And you asked about the spiritual side of it. I wrote the book, I started writing the book when I was in India. I was hitchhiking for 6 months. And I grew up in a completely secular household. And I'd studied philosophy, which is a very good way of turning you into an atheist or an agnostic. And so religion was always very external to my life. And then I got to India. And as you saw in the book at one point, and in the movie, Rafe Spall, the character that Rafe Spall plays, talks about a novel that sputtered, coughed, and died. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I was in India because it was a cheap place to be, and this novel just wasn't coming to life. Any of you here who've written something creative will realize that terrible feeling of you're putting so much effort into it and it doesn't come to life. So I had to put it aside, and I had this sort of inner hole in me. And I just, for the first time in my life, and how old was I? I was 31, I think. I finally noticed the abundance of religious expression in India. And there's more religion expressed per square mile in India than anywhere else on earth. Every religion has its members there. And I started noticing it for the first time, and I suddenly was intrigued, not so much by sort of the anthropology of it, how religion is manifested, but how it's lived, how it's felt. So I was interested in the phenomenon of faith. And so there's this very deeply unreasonable capacity to believe something that is fundamentally not reasonable. I was intrigued by that. And the reasons there's 3 religions in this story and in the movie is I didn't want to focus on one in particular. I wanted to look at what was common to all religions, which is that phenomenon of faith. Each religion practices and has a different view of the universe. You can't sort of say they're all the same. They're definitely not. But at the core, they have that leap of faith, that believing something that is not rational, that is not material right in front of you. And that's what struck me.
Okay, yes, there in the center, that gentleman who has his hand up.
Hi, John Sumley from the Toronto Star in Canada. I wonder if you guys could speak a bit to the international production. I mean, for a Hollywood studio film, you have a Taiwanese-American director based on a Canadian novel by a Spanish-Canadian author with an Indian cast. I mean, it's fairly unique for a studio film. I wonder if you guys could speak to that.
Yeah.
I'll speak to that.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, I mean, we felt so fortunate. Suraj was the one actor that Aang presented to us, and we were completely overwhelmed by his audition. So the casting of Pi was critical. Obviously, he captures the whole movie. He's almost every frame of it. But for us, we always saw this film as an international adventure for people of all ages. So the multinational cast and basically the story that's universal was something that we embraced, because we are a global world now as far as cinema goes. And this film, because of the imagery and the lack of dialogue in so many of the scenes, it transcended language and cultural barriers. So we felt that it was really a true international film for all audiences, and that was really exciting to us as a global corporation.
How did Gerard Depardieu get involved?
Yeah, I think Yann has some complex about French or something. French cook. Oh.
Well, I lived
French-
10 years. I
French
did live 10 years
India.
in Paris, so at the end of that, I was.
Piscine Malta, it's sort of international in its own fusion in its own way. Of course, the story far away or close at home for Suraj in India, none other than French India. So it has a foreign international sort of feeling to begin with. And when I get onto the project, it has to have American money and technology. There's like no way. You have to make in Hollywood, but you cannot make in LA because it would be too expensive. It's just impossible. There's certain things to do certain things. You cannot go think outside of the frame. To make this unusual movie, I have to create my own tank, I have to do this and that, I figured. And I decided to bring the movie to Taiwan, which is a big risk. We haven't hosted a Hollywood movie since San Pablo, 1965. So it seems to be crazy. But I think it's not really crazy because Taiwan will do anything for me. So we can really stretch it. Really, really stretch it.
Good to know.
The Indian boys and the international crew, we have like people from 23 countries to work in the movie. So it's a really, really international crew. And I occupy this abandoned airport in Taichung City, abandoned airport. So we use the terminal as our, all the facility we eat there. It's like a utopia of filmmakers. And then we use the hangars to build like our own Hollywood, and then we build a big wave tank and just discover what can be done. We're there on our own, and it's unusual. It's just naturally international, and of course Gerard Depardieu came, and I thought to have one person have one scene represent the worst of France, so to speak, versus Piscine Malta, the best. What iconic actor can I was lucky. Just send us the scene and say, okay, we'll do it, no problem. I have nothing to prove. I just want to be an interesting project. We fly to Taiwan, and it turns out to be a really, really wonderful. Taiwan is like my floating island. It's my hometown. Is also a floating island. It's kind of rootless. That's who I am. So I always feel international, and it's just natural for me. I feel quite at home. And I also find out it's kind of destiny. I think Simsan, the ship, sank just east of Taiwan. And we went out to where it's supposed to sink, 4 days out of Manila towards Canada. We went to that spot and we drift there on a little boat, turn off the engine. Just Suraj and I, the two of us. Just feel it, how pilot will feel. So that was fun. That's the day also he met Steve Callahan in a big Coast Guard ship.
Yeah. The questions, let's see. Yes, ma'am, over here. Hold on, wait for the microphone.
I am interested in how you assembled your tiger. How many Richard Parkers, I was almost going to say Richard Peñas.
It's also short for RP.
How many real...
I didn't think it got into this festival.
Yeah. How many real tigers did you work with? How did you assemble this fantastic creature?
We have four tigers, 3 from France. This is, I think, the world's greatest trainer. Totally respect the animal. It's fierce, just me, him, and the animal. Actually, I learned most of the tiger scenes from this person. So 3 from him. He doesn't work with food and anything, just discipline how just man on man. 2 of which are female. One is the sister of the man. The man tiger that we modeled from was a tiger named 7-year-old, nearly 500-pound, gorgeous tiger named King. He's just like the most magnificent animal you see. And then some of the fierce scenes have to be done by the ladies. One's his sister, the other is Phoebe's. So we have two tigers that do the ferocious scenes. They're more aggressive than King. King just poses like a king. So he does all the posing, and he did the swimming too. And some of the more docile, like his hunger for food, when he feels sick, we have a Canadian tiger. It was like Jonas.
This really was an international production.
He's patable. He's like, you just want to hug him.
Don't forget the hyena named Vlad.
My favorite is the hyena, Vlad. She's just like, she has the ugliest smile. When she relaxes, she looks like really neurotic and intimidating. I just love her. And I think I'm the only one she'll let to touch her nose, and she'll squeak with delight. It's horrifying. Pretty much. Well, the thing with Trent Tiger, we have nearly 30 shots in the movie that's real tiger. It has two usage for me. One is that when you do digital like this and not humanize them, you really need good references. They cannot be invented. So just dealing with them, we shot, whether it's making it a movie or not, or just for pure references, they leave like a great library of tiger behavior down to the every cell. So that's great reference. Otherwise, it's very tiger. Water, you're basically imitating God's work. You cannot guess, but reference is great. We learned tremendously from that. And secondly, I raised the bar for the digital guys. You have to match that in 3D. So that's really intimidating for him. I think it's a good kind of intimidation. So they work out great, and we love those tigers.
How much did you have, I mean, sort of I hope it's not a silly question, how much did you have to plan each shot, or how much did you see what you could get? I mean, is there a line between improvisation and very strict planning here?
It's both planning and improvisation, because for a movie like this, nothing worked the way you planned it, so you have to go along. I got like 1/8 of the shot in my shot list. It's sometimes a day or 2 days you can't get one shot down. It's just that difficult. I have a dramatic background. I don't believe in storyboards. I sometimes do it in action sequence so they can see it. But for this movie, actually, I go beyond storyboard because I had to. The shots are so expensive. You have to be so concise and precise. So I spent a year before production animate the whole movie. Actually, I made the movie before I even go ahead and shot it, so I can talk to the team how to go about every detail. So actually, I have a previs, like 1 hour, 70-minute previs. The whole voyage from beginning to end, it was animated. But of course, we can only do so much, and there's, it's not. I wouldn't call it improvising. It's a survival movie.
Get another question here. See on the back here. This gentleman here. We can just wait for the microphone. It's coming.
Thank you. Hello, thank you. It was an exceptional experience to have to start, to come in out of the torrential downpour into something that gives you a whole new perspective on, just being around water. But one of the things, what I wanted to ask about was just from the very first time we as the public saw anything of this film, the flying fish sequence that ran before Prometheus in 3D engagements, I was just like, okay, this is going to be something really exceptional and interesting, and it absolutely is. But I wanted to ask you, with that scene and then with another a little later on, that involves that's an overhead shot with countless creatures swimming underneath it. There's an aspect ratio shift, and I was wondering, was that something you were sort of experimenting with during the development of the film, or was it just sort of like to see what you could do, possibly with more of a, I know with the
I always wanted to do that since film school. Nobody allowed me to do it.
Excellent.
Why do we have to stock in one ratio? No, sometimes it shows, like, it occurred to me in like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when they do the vaulting, I wish it's a standard. When we're in the desert, it should be like widescreen. Now, why can we hop around? I think movie in the beginning has different shapes. Why do we stuck with one? So now it's digital. I hope I do something nobody noticed, but you noticed. I think flying fish scene is best seen widescreen because there's no other way to see it. Not only the scope is, panorama. I can, because the black area, I can put a fish out of, whether it's flying or swimming, I can put it out of I can fake it, put it out in the black, so it feels like it's outside the screen, literally. So I think that's a great tool in 3D filmmaking. It's something you can really put out there by hiding your black spaces. So I think for those reasons, I think it's very exciting when you see a fish hit something and hit his body and flip out or just go outside of the screen in the black. I think just adding extra realism. You feel like you're with the sound. You feel like you're in the middle of a feeding zone. The other just purely is kind of related to him. I thought that looked best that way, and it looks like the book cover. So I go straight. Yeah.
Elizabeth, will there be a 2D version of this released anywhere?
Yeah.
Yes, right here. Wait 1 second, we can get the microphone here. Here comes the gentleman.
This is a beautiful production, and the cinematography is fantastic. Obviously, it cost a lot of money, and I'm wondering, what was your budget, and did you manage to stay within that budget?
I was, but you're going to tell them what's the budget.
I don't usually like to talk about specifics with budgets, but I can tell you that it was an extremely well-run production, and it absolutely was within its budget, on schedule. They did a fantastic job. The way the film was planned and executed was, with all the difficulties that took place, I mean, with weather elements, lighting elements, the tank itself, the 3D, it was a really, really, really strong production.
That's why I was wondering, because it's so complex to do this.
It was
It's a
was
big
almost
undertaking,
undoable, and for many years we didn't think we could do it. But Aang and his team just, planned very, very, very well, and had a lot of contingencies, and he was flexible. For a meticulous artist as he is, he was incredibly flexible, and it was exhausting. I mean, by the end of the film, just to have done everything and shot it in 3 countries and, managed to do it as beautifully as they did, it was quite a feat. So.
And then just pass it over to Jennifer, and that'll have to be our last one.
Hi. You are so masterful in making the magical and the fantastic real and believable for us, and always beautifully so. There's one edit in this film that I kind of wondered what your intention was with it, and that is when the tiger takes the sheep, and it's suddenly behind bars where it's been before bars, and that kind of in front of the bars. And I kind of wondered
Which
what...
scene is that?
It's where the sheep, the tiger
goat,
grabs,
yeah.
I'm sorry, not the sheep, the goat, where the tiger grabs the goat, and the goat is left outside the bars, and we see that next the tiger dragging. And I just wondered what the leap of faith is there for us, and how that particular edit came to be, and if there's an intention behind it, a specific intention for us behind it.
Right before the scene, you hear the writer and the older Pai. They're about to introduce the upcoming scene. They say you don't know the strength of your faith until it's been tested. So that's the test. Actually, Pai's journey for me with the tiger started with that scene. It's a scene about disillusions, about the coming of age. In many movies, I do the loss of innocence, and I would call that bar mitzvah scene. It's father's lesson between father and the son. So it's the zoo to him is a paradise. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yann. I think the book has a little bit of a loss of paradise. The zoo is the paradise. It's innocent, and he has all this imagination story in his head and spiritual things, and then he got thrown out to the ocean. He cannot even rely on organized religions. He's facing the abstract idea of God. So in that, the journey begins with that disillusional scene. The father's a good. Without that scene, he wouldn't survive, as he said. But without mother's protection and all the illusion, he couldn't survive either. That's both sides of the bars, so to speak, of our lives. I think both stories are very valuable and important. And all that dividends and test of faith and leap of faith start with that. Of course, a leap, first you have to not believing it, having doubt. So after that scene, he went to existentialism books, although a little young for an Indian boy, maybe. But eventually, he comes around. He embraces faith. Otherwise, there's no way he can survive. I think both sides, I always do that sensibility, so to speak. You have to keep a balance, or you just swing between the two. There's God knows the solution. We don't. We just manage to catch up and survive. In making the movie, I do feel like I'm engaging in that character in the book, and all of us making the movie sort of been tested. All the difficulty. There are times it feels like, why are we making this movie? It doesn't make sense. The things occur to be really bizarre, but then once you overcome the obstacle, you look back, seems like there's arrangement, seems like there's a fate, there's a destiny, and you learn something. I think that's the first lesson I think for the reader, for the movie viewer, for me personally. And I don't think it should be done too graphically, because the movie is being sweet to that point. I think if you go too graphically or sounds too horrific, and the audience might shut down. And so I did the way it is because I have to do the scene, but I have to do it with restraint, because the movie has a long way to go from there.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I want to thank very much Yann, Suraj, Elizabeth, and especially Ang Lee for the film, and thank you very much for coming.